All right. Evening, everyone, and welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course. I'll be your teacher for the evening, Katan. That's my name, and we're going to be picking up or continuing, as I should say, in the acceptance unit. And we are in chapter 6 here, and we're talking about goals and setting goals, the importance of goals, and why we should make our goals realistic. And we're going to continue in that line of the lesson today, and we're going to get into a little bit of long term or short term and long term goals, right? Because we want to remind our students that they're going to be going through this process throughout their lives of setting goals, and whether they're for the most part they're going to be conscientious of it. They might not think about it per se as a goal that I'm setting, but nonetheless, when they have a desire or something that they're wanting to accomplish, they are in effect setting a goal. Our job, or should I say our goal, is to help them to understand what goals are, why goals are important, how they are beneficial for the development of a positive character, and to help them to understand the difference between positive and negative goals and how to set realistic goals. Okay, and that's what we've been covering for the last couple of lessons here with William and myself, and making goals positive. And we're going to get into, and we're going to talk a little bit more about sticking with our goals and understanding how we should handle failure and where failure comes from, and how to prevent failure from taking place in the first place in regards to our goals and setting our goals. Well, if you remember last week from what we covered, we were talking mostly about, pretty much on page 116, laying the groundwork for being realistic in goal setting, right? Because it doesn't, setting a goal is just one part of it, and getting you to have this mindset of achieving the things that you want, but you also have to set realistic goals. And it can be very easy, and every single one of us who've been a young person in this age range of 11 to 13 years old, or even before then, we probably set some pretty lofty goals when we were younger, not taking into consideration all the steps that we would have to take to accomplish that goal, right? We might have had a desire of being a doctor or an astronaut, or whatever the case might be. All of us can remember things that we wanted to do or accomplish at a later time in our life. Some of those things might have been extremely lofty or unrealistic, but in our minds, our imagination, kind of allowed us to wander beyond the realms of reality to some extent. Excuse me, until we got a little bit older and realized that there are things that we have to do if we're wanting to accomplish certain goals in our life, like completing school for one thing, completing our education, or going back and continuing in our education if we didn't complete it. Maybe getting a GED or something equivalent. Maybe going to college and taking certain courses in the course of study or the field that you're wanting to go to work in, or maybe going to a trade school, or getting so many years or hours of experience before you can be certified to do XYZ. And as we get older and we acquire more knowledge, and that's what we talked a little bit about in the previous class, is there more information that you need in order to accomplish that goal? When we're young and kind of carefree, we don't think about all the steps that are necessary to take in order to accomplish a goal. And that's our job as teachers, kind of to bring our students back to earth, so to speak, and help them to realize that, first off, of course, what we're teaching in this class here is that we must, use self-control, right, and morality, positive moral character in the setting of our goals. Because without those two as a part of our goal setting, then we can stray into some very immoral activities in the quest to accomplish our goal. All right. And then, of course, you remember some of the examples that were given about, a person might want to be wealthy or have a very nice car, a very nice, very nice house. Well, you can't just go squat in somebody's house who's out of town or out of the country, and now you've accomplished your goal. Well, no, because you're trespassing. You're stealing, right? And that's because of a lack of morality or following the rules, upholding the rules that led to that person accomplishing that goal. Okay, and we can see many of these things throughout history. I think if you go back and study the establishment of Oklahoma, the last territory there, um, 1889. I know I'm getting in trouble for not remembering this, but in April they had the land run, right, and it was an opportunity for people to go and to acquire land, and people can go out and stake their claim, and they would get a certain amount of land that would be theirs. They just needed to get there and basically stake their claim. Well, others who also had a goal of having land too, this is where you get the Oklahoma Sooners, because people would actually go and camp out before the actual start time, and they would be in a certain spot, and people will come up and, hey, how did you get here so fast, right? I mean, they were way far away, but they're already there, and these are people who were probably at the front of the line, knowing that they had been at the front of the line from the very beginning. Well, people had went and tucked pieces of land before the allotted time was given, and they were there sooner than everybody else. Well, they had a goal, not a problem, something that was attainable because it was available to pretty much anybody who applied. But they didn't follow the rules, right? There was a set of rules that needed to be followed and upheld in order for a person to claim that legally. Okay, and there's many examples throughout history where people have chosen immoral ways to accomplish goals. Well, this is what we want to caution our students against. Even in school, right? It can be very easy. I remember when I was growing up. I don't know. I think for a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, they're kind of in that time period of their life where they don't get excited about anything but having fun, right? Or they don't get excited about anything unless it's important to them. And they see school kind of to some degree, and this is not across the board for everybody, because some young people really enjoy school, really enjoyed going to school, and really enjoyed learning and improving themselves. But, a great majority of young people, school was boring. School was just something that they had to do. School was just an opportunity for me to go and see and hang out with my friends. Well, when it came time to not just learning, but putting your knowledge to the test, especially when it comes to something like book reports or essays, people would not read. They would not read the book. I remember people trying to do things like read the summary on the cover, of the back or the outside cover of the book, to get an idea of what the book was about. Or they would find a set of cliff notes, right? Cliff notes were very popular. They catered to lazy people, who didn't want to take the time to read the book and to learn about the information that was in there so they could write a decent book report or an essay on that particular report. And most teachers, they already know these things. They know what's in the cliff notes. They know what's in the, on the cheat sheets. They know when you watch the movie, because the movie wasn't the same as the actual book. There were certain details that might have been left out of the movie or added to the movie that wasn't a part of the book. Well, people will try to find any way they can if their minds aren't set on these positive moral principles that we've been learning here for the last several months here in the Peaceful Solution. There's always going to be someone who will try to find a way to work around the rules, try to find a way to accomplish something easier, right? But the problem is that in the effort to try to get something outside of the rules, they actually make it harder for themselves. And in some cases, they can make it harder for the group as a whole. You think about when, a group has a goal of accomplishing a specific task, and each person in that group has a job to do. Well, if one person in that group kind of halfway does their job, right, and doesn't take the time and the effort to gain the knowledge that they need in order to accomplish their portion of the job, that person is going to be the weak link of that entire group. So when it comes time for them to accomplish their project, it's not going to have that soundness, that wholeness that it needs, because one person didn't do their job. They tried to find an easier way. They tried to, do something immorally in order to accomplish the goal. And so, these are some of the things that we have to keep in mind, because these are situations that, our students are going to eventually face at some point in their life. Okay. And whether it's them or them thinking about wanting to, accomplish a goal in a specific way, or them seeing someone who is taking the wrong road in accomplishing a goal, well, at that point, they can be, a source of encouragement, a source of motivation for that person, and kind of redirect them into doing the right thing, even if they don't want to, right? But doing the right thing will grant us true success, not the success that we fabricate in our mind, like the person who wants to, have a lot of money so they successfully rob a liquor store, right? Or successfully rob a bank, right? There's no success in breaking the rules. Remember, keep that in mind. It's kind of one of those oxymorons, success in breaking the rules, successfully rob the bank, right? No, they failed because they didn't choose the correct path that would have gotten them success, right? They could have actually gotten themselves educated and gotten a job as a banker or a loan officer or somebody, who even worked at the bank, and, used their skills and things in the peaceful solution. And, if that was their goal, to make a lot of money, they could have actually worked up to become the president of the bank, right? With these morals that we're teaching here in these in this curricula, there's our students can accomplish great things, and when I say great, I mean things that tie right back in and are the foundation of what we've been teaching from the very beginning, starting in the character unit. They can accomplish great things, right? And be an instrument of morality and motivation and encouragement to others as well in the process. And that's what we want. That's what we want them to get out of this, and have the actual desire to put these principles into practice when they're faced with difficulties in their life, right? Because they want to see success, or they want to have success in their life. They don't want to go down the wrong road, right? They do want to take the road less traveled, which is the road that everybody's not taking right now, because, gaiety and fun and entertainment and doing whatever feels good is the only thing that's on their mind, right? And it takes effort, it takes determination, it takes discipline. But in the end, this is what they're going to accomplish, is what we're going to start here on page 117, which is where we left off last week. Well, we left off on 116 last week. But the sweet smell of success. So if you have your book, of course, as we remind you continuously, you can find that on our Facebook, Official Peaceful Solution Facebook page. You can find that tab for the books and character unit. Click more. That tab will bring you down to acceptance book, and you can pull that up and you can follow right along with us. And we're in chapter 6. And we're on page 117. You're following along in your books. And this is entitled The Sweet Smell of Success. All right. So now, when you consider, and we're going to start here at the very top of the page here, when you consider these questions before you commit yourself to pursuing a goal, okay? When you consider these questions, well, hopefully you were able to watch class last week. If you weren't able to join us, at least go back and watch it. These questions that we're referring to are the 5 questions that are found on page 116 here, okay? And that's under the questions on making sure your goal is realistic, okay? And so, question 1 is, how long will it take for you to accomplish what you want? Question 2 is this something you can accomplish by yourself, or will you need assistance for others? Remember, these are the things, if you look at the sentence above it, it says to be realistic about the goals you set, take into account the following questions. So this helps the student to kind of, consider some well-rounded questions that will help them to determine if their goal is realistic or not. And if it's not, then they've got to kind of alter the course to some degree, so that they can make sure that they do fall in line with things that'll help them to accomplish their goals. Question 3 was or is, will you need additional information to pursue your goal? Number 4 is, what sacrifices will you have to make? And finally, number 5, will you need money to accomplish your goal? All right. And so this is the questions. These 5 questions are the ones you need to consider before you commit, right? Before you commit to a particular goal, pursuing a particular goal. Now, committing does not necessarily only mean, going to someone and saying, I such and such and such do hereby commit to this goal, right? The committing, like everything else, it starts in your mind, right? It starts in your mind. And people can form these commitments and these bonds to these goals and so forth, and they can become very strong, right? Because they look at something and they have a desire to accomplish something, but maybe they haven't gone through all these steps here. Maybe they haven't asked all these questions. And so as they stumble and fall in their quest to accomplish a goal, not realizing that the goal isn't realistic, right? Because they've committed to it, they're going to continue to press forward. Now, somebody might say, well, hey, that's a great thing. They're being determined and so forth. Well, if them pressing forward in the goal is only bringing harm to themselves, if it's only making matters worse for them, if it's bringing harm or taking away from somebody else, right, then it isn't a realistic, beneficial goal. So now they have to come back to the drawing table and lay all these things out, and then plug these questions here in their program, so to speak, and see what pops out. And if they need to make some adjustments, and this might come with guidance. This is where your part as a teacher, will come into play, where you can go and say, well, I see, you seem a little bit frustrated, that it seems like you're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish. Do you want to talk about it? Well, here's some steps that can help you. What is your goal to begin with, right? Okay, well, how are you going about accomplishing it? All right, and you can kind of guide them in helping their mind to understand, well, maybe the goal that you're trying to accomplish is not a positive one, okay? So then we have to readjust and go back and separate between what's positive and negative, right? And our goal is to guide our students' thinking, right? And to help them to get to the point where they can be self-guided, right? Because in life, they're not always going to have that teacher walking alongside of them, but they can have the words of what they learned from the teacher in their ears, in their minds. They could have those things coming forth from their heart as a desire to do the right thing, but that comes with the continual process of teaching every day, in addition to us as the teacher setting the right example. Okay, so when you consider these questions before you commit yourself to pursuing a goal, notice here, you can be sure that you are being realistic about the goals you are setting. All right. Now remember what we covered last class about being realistic. If you look back to page 116 at the very top paragraph there, we see that the word realistic means to be sensible and practical, right? To be sensible and practical. And we covered some of the definitions of what that word sensible and practical means. And just for your notes there, the word sensible, in regards to a statement or a course of action, it means chosen in accordance with wisdom or prudence. And remember what we talked about how you can start the process of obtaining wisdom. Well, first you have to get knowledge. You have to educate yourself. And then you have to put that practice into education and allow the lessons that you have learned to come forth and be the response to circumstances that you encounter on a daily basis. And you couple that with the experience that you get by practicing the peaceful solution, and now you become a wise person, right? And you can prevent difficulties and hardships and mistakes and wrong choices and immoral attitudes and practices and statements and so forth, because now you're putting into practice, you're thinking about things beforehand, you're setting your mind in advance, your goal being to always allow the outcome of anything you have control over to be a peaceful solution. Because, a wise person also knows that they only have control of themselves. What they think, how they feel, and how they act. Okay? So, chosen in accordance with wisdom or prudence, likely to be of benefit. This is something that's sensible. And we're talking about realistic. And of course, when you tie in your goals, and this is, bringing our students back to positive goals, they should never have in their mind to set a negative goal, right? Even if something does creep in their mind, well, they get rid of that hot thought, that negative thought, and replace it with something that's cool or beneficial, positive, because sometimes things will pop into the mind of a person. We, even as adults, will still have things that'll pop into our mind when something takes place. Somebody might, step on our toe, or something might not go the way we want to that day or at this particular time, even in our desire to accomplish a goal or just get through the day, right? And we might, suddenly have a negative thought. Well, when we recognize that thought, then it's up to us to recognize it, not focus on it, right? The goal is to eliminate the negative and accentuate the positive, but we have to replace that thought with something beneficial and positive that's going to help us to continue in the pursuing of our goal. And so, of having benefit, which ties into our goals. Our goals should be beneficial, and it also means having, containing, or indicative of good sense or reason. All right, and so that was from the definition of the word sensible, which is a part of the definition of the word realistic. The other word in the definition of that word realistic is practical, and that means of or concerned with the actual doing or use of something rather than with theory and ideas. So something that we can actually put into practice, tying into that root word of practical, of actual practice. What can I actually perform this particular thing that I want to do, right? Because a lot of things sound great on paper and a lot of things sound great in theory, but if you can't put it into practice, then it's not realistic. And that's the beautiful thing about the peaceful solution, because, of course, you have to read all of this information that's in here, right? But every single word of it is practical, right? It's realistic to accomplish this goal of changing the hearts and the minds and helping each and every person who is taught this character education program to develop a positive character. There's nothing unrealistic about that. And then it also says here of an idea, plan, or method likely to succeed or be effective in real circumstances. Okay, so something that can actually be successful if you put it into practice. Like, hey, if you don't steal, you won't cause trouble for yourself or others. Well, when you put it into practice, lo and behold, well, you haven't caused trouble for others, right? If you don't talk back to an authority, right, you won't get sent to the principal's office. Even if you feel you're wronged, zip it. Keep your mouth closed. Don't talk back. There's a time and a place for everything, right? And that's something that we also have to teach our students. There's a time and a place for everything. A student can ask a teacher a question if there's maybe a punishment or something, a consequence doled out that they didn't do, but the teacher just looked in the general direction and thought that they were a part of it. You can come to the teacher after the class and ask if they could, if you could speak with them, right? And so there's a time and a place for everything, but it says likely to succeed or be effective in real circumstances. Well, I can tell you, life is real. It's not the fairy tale that Hollywood presents, the internet presents, social media presents. No, people have to go out in everyday, real life situations and interact with others, make decisions, deal with emotions, setbacks, curveballs and pitfalls, things not going their way. Okay, people being disrespectful to them, and so forth. And how are they going to respond? How are we going to respond as students of the peaceful solution? With our number one goal always should be to develop and maintain a positive character. Well, there could be a circumstance that comes out of left field that you don't even recognize, that you weren't even expecting. Doesn't matter, right? You're still going to put into practice the things that you've learned in order to bring about a peaceful solution. If the goal is to be a peacemaker, in regards to what we're covering in the peaceful solution. All right, and so it says here, continuing in the sweet smell of success. Realistic goals that are well planned will motivate you to attain them. Real goals that are well planned will motivate you to attain them, to work towards accomplishing those goals. Irregardless of what you might have to go through in order to get it, or like we talked about here, the sacrifices that you might have to make in order to attain that goal, when they're well planned, right? It's like a person who, remember, the people who climb Mount Everest, okay? Their goal is to reach the summit, the very top of that mountain. That's a pretty lofty goal. Many people have lost their lives in the quest to conquer Mount Everest, from unexpected storms, from just not being prepared, and just accidents and things of that nature. But people who are educated and are determined for their goal to be successful, they're going to take the time, and sometimes it's months. It could be even years of planning before they would even set one foot on the base camp of that mountain range, because they know that, like life, it's a real life situation climbing that mountain. A storm is not going to go, well, you know what, you didn't really plan this out well, I'm going to go on the backside of the mountain here. An avalanche is not going to stop for you because you didn't think these things through, or you didn't bring a tent, or warm clothing, or a shovel to dig yourself out, right? And so people who want to accomplish that goal of climbing Mount Everest, they're going to take all these things into consideration. They're going to, like the point number 3 on page 116 says, will you need additional information to pursue your goal? Right? They're not just going to open up the Encyclopedia Britannica and read everything they can about Mount Everest. That might be a part of it, but they also know that that's not going to tell them everything they need to know in order to accomplish that goal. They're going to need to talk to mountain climbers. They're going to probably have to get trained by mountain climbers. They're going to have to know how to function in low oxygen situations, how to change out a tank, make sure the regulator's working properly. They're going to have to talk to people who've actually successfully climbed the mountain. They might want to talk to people who didn't successfully climb the mountain and find out where they went wrong so they won't make those same mistakes. They're going to have to get maps. They're going to have to learn how to read maps. You see, all of these things go into the process of just completing one particular goal, right? And it's the same with life. There are many different steps. It's not always just point A to point B, right? You might have to go through all the alphabet, so to speak, in order to get to that particular goal, because there could be detours on the road of your success. Doesn't mean you can't accomplish your success, but you have to be ready to make changes as the need arises. So realistic goals that are well planned will motivate you to attain them. And that's something you might want to ask your students too. What is your motivation for attaining a particular goal? Because if there's no motivation behind it, then they might start off at the starting line, full strength, but then, it's too long, it's too hot, my feet hurt, sweat's getting in my eye, I don't want to deal with this, right? Hypothetically speaking, or metaphorically speaking, I mean. So if they don't have a motivating factor for them to accomplish that goal, well, they'll probably give up pretty easy. The first sign of adversity, they'll turn and throw their hands up. Because you will know that they are within your ability to achieve, okay? So well-planned goals will motivate you to attain them because you will know that they are within your ability to achieve. And that's why it's important that they understand about setting realistic goals. Some things are beyond a person's ability, right? And this also goes into, a whole nother lesson, which we'll get into much later, possibly. You can find more information on that about the peaceful solution in regards to dealing with parents, because parents set goals for their children, right? But they have to take into consideration, does the child have the ability to accomplish that goal? Well, as students of the peaceful solution, and in our students, we want to get them to take into consideration, do I have the ability to accomplish the goal that I want to accomplish? If not, what are some of the things that I need to do in order to develop the ability to do so? Can I even have the ability to do it, right? I mean, and these are real questions that they have to take into consideration. It might even need an adult to kind of kind of spark their thinking about things that they have not considered. And lastly, in that last sentence there, it says, setting and achieving realistic goals lead to success. And I have a note there, in regards to success. True success in goal setting or goal achieving is always moving you in a positive direction and will support your building and maintaining of a positive moral character. That's true success. Now remember, a person who has very little knowledge on character development, well, they might feel that I heard somebody say one time, I was really broke and I was really down, and I saw somebody, I needed money, to pay a bill or to get some food, or I don't remember the circumstance, but they saw somebody in a checkout line, when they pulled the money out of their wallet, drop a $20 bill. And they thought, oh man, today's my lucky day, right? Somebody dropped the $20 bill, and that's exactly what I needed. Now I can have success, or I can successfully pay this bill, or I can do this or do that. They didn't necessarily use the word success, but they felt that it was success because they were able to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, right? No, that's not success, right? Because you're stealing from someone else. You're doing harm to someone else, right? And I know we've covered this before, but just keep in mind when we make the statement, a positive choice is something that won't bring harm to yourself, others, or the environment. It's not only physical harm, right? There's many different types of harm, and we've covered this before, but just to refresh your memory, don't forget, there's mental harm. You can mentally harm somebody by the choices that you make. There's emotional harm, that can come to a person, that something that you did that affected them in a very strong way, right? That could be a trigger for certain emotions. There's financial harm, okay? Choices that people make and not following the rules in order to accomplish a goal can bring harm to the family, because now they have to pay a fine or something like that, or maybe they have to pay out a lawsuit or something. If they work at a business or a store or something, that business could suffer a financial loss because of an immoral choice that someone made. And there's many forms of harm that can come to a person. Don't think that, well, I didn't hit that person, so I didn't do harm to them, or I didn't hit myself, so I didn't do harm to myself. No, there's many different ways that harm can come to someone, and we have to take these things into consideration when we consider our choices. All right, so we want our students, of course, to have true success, and they can accomplish this by achieving realistic goals. So now let's look down to the next paragraph here. And we're going to talk about the agony of failure, okay? Because sometimes that might occur, right? And we're going to see why here, and give some insight as to how we and our students can prevent failure as much as possible. And so it says here, under the agony of failure, unrealistic goals usually end in failure because they are not well planned. They're not well planned. And remember what we covered in that word "planned" there, because we see here goals that are realistic are well planned. Well, unrealistic goals are the opposite. They're unwell planned or not well planned. The definition of that word "plan" means a detailed proposal for doing or achieving something. So remember the example that I gave with climbing Mount Everest, right? It has to be detailed, right? You have to take into consideration every little detail because in that case, it's a matter of life and death. Okay, not every decision is a matter of life and death, but you can suffer major setbacks if you don't stop and think about things before you do them, or as we said at the very beginning of this, commit to pursuing a goal. Goal. Okay, so unrealistic goals usually end in failure because they are not well planned. They can leave the individual feeling frustrated, right? Unrealistic goals that are unattainable could also discourage you from setting other goals. And I've seen this. I've actually experienced this just throughout life, and I think most of us have in setting unrealistic goals and not accomplishing them. How it makes us feel. Like without the peaceful solution, you start beating yourself up. You start putting yourself down. Ah, man, I can never do anything right. And nothing ever works out for me. And why is everybody else successful and I'm not successful? Right? And so you start in with the negative thoughts, and then the negative feelings come in, and of course the negative talk starts to solidify and back these things up. And then you get the mindset of, why should I even try? It's not going to work. Every time I try to accomplish something, it never works out for me, right? And it can be very easy to give up. And and even in striving to attain a positive goal, it can be easy to throw your hands up and just say, you know what, I quit. This is just too hard. Um, I've I don't do a lot of running, but I remember growing up and being in high school. It was junior high. I think it was high school, and we have the physical education and running certain relays. I don't remember all the numbers, the 440s and all those different things, sprints and all those races that they had. And I remember feeling like my heart was about to burst out of my chest. My chest was burning, my lungs were burning so much, my legs, you know, they were so filled with fire, it seemed like, because I was really pushing my muscles to the extreme. Of course, I only gone 20 feet, but I was still in a hard situation there. I didn't exercise a lot. Um, but I remember thinking how easy it would have been just to give up, right? And just drop on the ground and just, breathe all heavy until I get my sense of, being able to walk again back. But no, I pushed myself, and I was satisfied, kind of in pain, but satisfied when I got to the end of that particular race or finish line or whatever it was that I was on. Okay, and that's the way it is in life sometimes. You can go through hardships, but if something that you're striving to do is realistic and attainable, and you're motivated to attain it, you're going to keep pushing forward. If it's unrealistic and unattainable, you're going to be met with a failure. Failure. That'd be like saying I'm going to sprint full throttle up Mount Everest and down the other side, and I'm not going to take a break. You know, no, that's not realistic. That's not a realistic goal. Okay, and you're going to be met with failure, and it can discourage you. Goals can also be unrealistic if they are set too high. Okay, if they're set too high. In other words, they are unreachable at a certain time because of circumstances that are not within your control. All right, and remember what we covered at the very beginning of this in helping our students to understand about acceptance, right? And laying the groundwork for what acceptance is. Why it's important to accept certain things and even certain circumstances that are beyond our control. And if you have your book, we're going to just look back real quick, just to kind of rehash some of this information because it's been several months here. But keep this sentence in mind. In regards to goals, can be unrealistic if they are set too high. In other words, they are unreachable at a certain time. Not that they can't be reached, but at a certain time, right? There might be age restrictions, There might be location restrictions. It could be education requirement restrictions. You have to have, I know in high school you have to have so many points. I believe they call them points in order to graduate high school, right? And there might be ways that you can kind of expedite that point gathering, but until you get so many points or credits, I think they call them credits, is what I meant, not points. Credits, you're not going to be able to graduate high school. So, certain time, unreachable at a certain time because of circumstances that are not within your control. All right. So let's look back here real quick to page 1, and let's look at under the section the cans and can-nots of life. And here, this first paragraph here, sentence here, it says, "Here is the bottom line. There will be things in your life that you will not be able to change, and there will be things that you can." All right. When you are able to make a distinction between the two and focus on what you can change, you will demonstrate acceptance of who you are as a unique person. Okay. And so that's important to take these things into consideration when setting reachable or attainable goals. Let's look at page 8 real quick. Page 8 in the acceptance unit. This is chapter 1 still. And we're going to look at that top paragraph there. It says, keep in mind that just because something is not within your control, all right, and that's, again, there are going to be a lot of things that are not within the control of a lot of our students, especially if they're young. They're within this, 11 to 13-year-old age range. Even if they're older, even if they're adults, there might be a lot of things that are not within their control. We just kind of want to help them to be realistic and stay focused on that, but not be discouraged because it's not within their control, because they still have themselves, their attitude, their character, the choices that they make, the way they think, that is 100% within their control. So keep in mind that just because something is not within your control at this point in your life, right? Remember what we covered, unreachable at a certain time. So it doesn't mean it's permanent, right? People sometimes take permanent actions for temporary situations. Just wait a little bit, and give it time. In the meantime, continue to build your positive character. And when the time comes where you can do this particular thing, or you're old enough, or you have enough resources or credits or whatever, then you can move forward in the positive direction. So it's not within your control at this point in your life doesn't mean it will always be that way, right? Sometimes it's hard to see beyond, our own nose sometimes. Focus on the things you can control, like your attitude and grades, instead of worrying about the things you have no control over. And developing the moral character traits of patience and thankfulness can really help you at this stage of your life. Keep in mind that you will not be a teenager forever. Focus on educating yourself in moral development to achieve your highest potential. And so that's what we want to, as a teacher, make those notes in your book so you can kind of remind them of these things so they don't forget the previous lessons that they've learned. And then lastly, we're going to look at page 12 there under When Life Hands You Lemons. And we'll look at the very bottom paragraph there. And it says, don't allow life's challenges to get you down or cause you to lose hope. Instead, let them motivate you to succeed in reaching your full moral potential. Okay? And so, this is why it's important to understand these principles that we learned here to prevent what we're dealing with right here, the agony of failure. Because there might be some setbacks. And the setback in accomplishing your goal does not mean a failure. Okay? Remember what it says here at the very beginning of this sentence here. Unrealistic goals usually, and the key word there is end. End in failure. End. Final. Done. It's over. Right? A setback does not mean the end. If you're traveling on the road, say you want to get from Texas to Ohio, hopefully in the summertime, not in the wintertime, and you have a flat tire, that's a setback. That doesn't mean a failure, right? That doesn't mean that you failed. But if you're traveling from Texas to Ohio and you don't follow the directions, you didn't plan this thing out, who needs a map? I'm just going to wing it. And you end up in Nebraska, well, that's a failure, right? Because your goal was to go to Ohio. Now you're in one of the coldest places in the wintertime, you know, and all you have is a t-shirt and a pair of jeans, okay? So that's a failure. A flat tire, that's a setback. Not being old enough, that might be a setback, okay? But it doesn't mean that it's permanent. So now we're going to take a look here at these. These are some of the scenarios here at the very bottom here. We're going to look at goals that are realistic and attainable and ones that are not. And it says there, read the following scenarios and decide which goal is realistic and attainable and which one is not. And then answer the questions that follow. And so this is a great opportunity for you to really kind of get your students' attention. Maybe call on one or two to read scenario A and scenario B. And get them, a couple students to read, and then as many as time will allow, students to give answers to the questions that follow. So letter A here, we're going to look at this first example of a goal. And it says 13-year-old Brenda wants to earn $150 for new school clothes. That's great, showing some responsibility there. She wants to buy some of her own clothes, some things that she really likes. She decides to babysit for her neighbors. They agree to pay her $20 every weekend to babysit between the months of June through August. Is Brenda's goal of earning $150 realistic and attainable? Why or why not? So we can have to do a little bit of math in this one here. But of course, when we look at $20 by 12 weeks, right? Because she's going to babysit on the weekends and 4 weeks in a month, then yes, because she's going to earn, as you can see here, $240. She's actually going to earn more than what she set out to accomplish, and that's really the icing on the cake when we actually can do a little bit more, a little bit better when we set out to accomplish a particular goal. That makes it even better. So of course her goal is realistic and attainable because there's approximately 12 weekends within those 3 months there. So if she saves her money, which that's something else that has to be taken into consideration, if she makes $20 a week and she spends $10 every week, she's not going to have enough. She's going to be short $30, right? So she has to not only make the money, but she also has to save the money as well, right? She's got a little wiggle room in there where she could, enjoy some of the fruits of her labor, but she has to keep in mind what she's wanting to accomplish. All right, so let's look at question B there. Right next to that, it says, Drew has a 2-page book report due tomorrow. The book has 300 pages, and he has not begun reading it. His goal is to read the book and write the report between 7 and 9 p.m. Why? Because he wants to be done by 9 so he can watch a TV show. Is Drew's goal of completing the book, writing the report, and watching the show realistic and attainable? Well, of course not. It's not. No, Drew's goal is not realistic and attainable, right? For most teenagers, reading and understanding a 300-page book and then writing a report on it will take longer than 2 hours. Now, unless Drew has some unseen prodigy going on in his mind, if he did, he probably would have had it done when the book report was assigned, right? Having some foresight, he would have had it done so he can have time to do the things he wants. I kind of look at that approach like eating your vegetables first so you can have the steak later, right? And you can enjoy the steak as the last thing you had on your plate there, or chicken or whatever it is that you seem to like. But his goal was not attainable. It was not realistic, right? It was not something he was going to accomplish. Even if he was a speed reader, right? You have to be able to understand this information in order to do a book report, because that's one of the things that the teacher is going to be looking at is have you comprehended it? And I remember going to school, and when I took English class, boy, I hated the comprehension courses that we had to take. I just really didn't like them, but it wasn't because they were bad. It was just because at that point in my life, I didn't see the value in it, right? As an adult, I see the value in understanding things, understanding the things you read, especially when you start looking at contracts and so forth. Because if you don't, that can come and bite you in the end if you're not careful. All right, so we saw those examples there. Um, and you see here Brenda here, she tuck some of these things into consideration, these points in the setting goals. When she determined to earn $150, first off, she had a positive moral way of wanting to accomplish the $150. She wanted to earn it, right? She didn't want to steal it. She didn't want to bribe somebody for it, right? She wanted to earn it. Okay. Um, and notice, she had to consider how long it would take her for it to accomplish that goal. Because it was summertime, well, she had time from June through August to accomplish that particular goal because school usually starts at the end of August, beginning of September, somewhere around there. So she had enough time. Um, is it something she could accomplish by herself, or would she need assistance from others? Well, she needed permission to be able to babysit. She needed to be able to babysit somebody's child. She couldn't just bust up in the house and start babysitting and say, "Hey, give me $20," right? No, she actually needed assistance from others to allow her to do that. Maybe she needed a ride to the babysitters, or whatever the case might be. Will you need additional information? Well, she probably knew how to babysit. Will you have sacrifices you have to make? Well, she probably would have had to give up her, I don't know, 2 hours or 4 hours of whatever it was during that time when she was babysitting the child on the weekend, where she couldn't do something else. Maybe her friends were going to go to the mall or going to go to the park or something at that time. Well, her keeping in mind her goal of what she was wanting to accomplish, she would have to say, "Hey, man, I'd really like to go with you guys, but I'm working to save money so I can buy clothes for school." So yeah, she probably did have to make some sacrifices. And also, would you need money to accomplish your goal? She probably didn't need money unless she had to. Well, I don't think she would have had to pay her parents to give her a ride. Well, she might have had to take the bus, right? She might have had to take the bus, public transportation, to get to the person's house that she was babysitting. So she might have needed a little bit of money for that. All right. So let's look back to the lesson plan here. And we're going to look at lesson plan 6, page E. Lesson plan 6, page E. And we're going to look at procedure 6. And so we get into this here. We're not going to get too deep into it, but we'll kind of get started here a little bit there. And it says, explain to students that another aspect of goal setting is differentiating, or being able to distinguish one thing from another, between short and long-term goals. Instruct students to turn to page 118 in their handbooks and read the section entitled, "Here's the Long and Short of It." Tell students that by learning to set short-term goals, they will be encouraged to achieve their long-term goals and determine their purpose in life. All right. So, like we gave the example of a person that might want to, maybe they might want to be a doctor. Well, some short-term goals that they're going to have to set for themselves are, well, I'm going to have to graduate high school, then I'm going to have to go to college, then I'm going to have to go to med school, then I'm going to have to do an intern, for a while. There's a lot of goals that they're going to have to set for the long-term goal of becoming a doctor. Maybe they want to be a pediatrician, maybe they want to be a veterinarian, a doctor of veterinary medicine, right? Or a dentist or something like that. But short-term, they might break it down into semesters, right? Usually 4 semesters within a school year. So this semester, I'm going to strive to do my very best in class. And they might even, through their research, look at things that doctors really need to know in that particular field in order to be successful. So they might pay close attention in biology class. They might pay close attention in science class. Okay, there might be things that line up with their field of study or their course of study that they're going to want to take place or take as a course later on in life. I could think of many times in my life where I've been doing a particular thing and I've thought to myself out loud, boy, I really would that I would have paid attention in history class, or I really would that I would have paid attention in, math class or science class or whatever, Well, now's the time for them to do that. And this is where getting educated, like we covered here, going back here, the third point on page 116, will you need additional information to pursue your goals? So if they're wanting to be a doctor of veterinary medicine, or if they want to be a doctor of dentistry, or whatever it might be, an eye doctor or whatever, they might take into consideration the things that they're learning now, and in the short term say, well, I'm going to really pay attention and do my very best in science class, or biology class, or math class, or reading class, or whatever the case might be. Maybe they want to be an author or a writer, or maybe they want to be a teacher. Okay, and so these are some of the things that they might need to take into consideration in setting short-term goals in order to accomplish their long-term goal. So let's look at the very top here of the page here. It says, here's the long and short of it. The next step in setting positive, realistic goals is to determine if they are long-term or short-term. A short-term goal is one that can be achieved within a short period of time. For example, you make a goal to clean your room after school, or you decide you need to save your allowance this week to attend a special field trip. Okay, and short is really kind of relative to the long-term goal, right? A short-term goal might be a week, a goal that you set for accomplishing something within a week. It might be something you set in accomplishing something for that day, or it might be something you set in accomplishing in the case of a semester, something that you accomplish in so many weeks, however long the semester is. Short-term goals are a great way to test your goal-setting skills. It's kind of like I've read one time when somebody says, if you're having a hard time accomplishing your goals, it's easy to look at the big picture and think, wow, that is a lot of work to do, right? But they say, to make it easier, and this is what we're going to talk about here, start breaking things down into smaller pieces, right? When you have a big plate of food sitting in front of you, you can't just take that plate and jam the whole thing down your throat. You're going to choke, right? You're going to have a very difficult time. But you can eat everything that's on that plate if you break it down into smaller pieces. Well, much like eating, we have to set our goals in the same way. Like the big goal is to accomplish this great achievement in life. Well, what are the little things that I need to do, the bite-sized pieces that I need to do or to make in order to accomplish these things? So short-term goals are a great way to test your goal-setting skills, to see how great you are even in your character are you a person who is disciplined? Are you determined? Are you patient? Right? If you have a short-term goal and something takes place where there's a wrench thrown in the situation, are you going to throw your hands and give up? Or you're probably not going to have much success in accomplishing the long-term goals if you can't stick with the short-term goals, right? What's your attitude like when something takes place that is out of your control or is totally unexpected? These are things that they'll have to take into consideration. That's why doing these small goals will help to see how great they are in their goal-setting skills. And then the next sentence says, an easy way to make goal setting a part of your daily routine is to make a to-do list. And I'm telling you, one of the things we're going to learn in here about our goals and setting goals is writing things down. It is so imperative to be able to write things down. It makes it's something like, I've heard it said that when you have a thought in your mind, that's kind of intangible. But when you write it down, now you have an actual concrete thing that you can see and grasp hold of and look at, something that's real, and start to work to bring it into fruition. Okay. So making a to-do list, that'll break those big goals down into smaller ones. Write down 3 or 4 things you want to accomplish each day and then work at accomplishing them. And I would encourage you to make it a goal and working to accomplish attending the next class, because right now I'm about out of time. But our next class is going to be on 11/28 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we're going to be picking. I know I kind of started there on page 118, but I'm sure the teacher will go back and kind of rehearse that and give more details. And that's what we're going to be picking up on 118 in Chapter 6 of the Acceptance Unit. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next class. Have a wonderful day.